Areas of interest could develop in the next week in the Indian and Pacific Oceans on today's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for May 11th. We have no active storms, but we do have two areas of interest around the world right now, and both could be primed to develop in the next 7 days. We are still code unclassified, as it's still unlikely that these systems will provide impacts in the next 5 to 7 days. So first it's the Atlantic, and it's 21 days until hurricane season, and we have no areas of interest. Basically nothing going on at all in the Atlantic, as you can clearly see. What you will see down the corner there is the Eastern Pacific, which we're going to be getting onto now. 20% chance that we've designated with only 4 days until hurricane season, so it's really just in time for the start of the season, and it looks like there could be a system that might be active as that happens. That system has a higher chance of developing later on in the 7-day period into next week, and models are still a little bit all over the place on it. No areas of interest in the Western Pacific right now, although there's still rumblings that there could be a system coming up soon, but the models have been too unreliable on it to designate anything. North Indian Ocean likewise. In the Australian region, things looking very quiet here now. Of course, we're into the off season, and hopefully we don't get any more late season surprises like the one that tried to develop last week in Papua New Guinea, or over New Guinea, Indonesia actually. And in the South Pacific, the Southwest Indian Ocean, wrong order, 50% chance now that we've given for this area of interest. It's got fairly strong model support. It doesn't look like it will get particularly strong, but if it does form, it would be a bit of a surprise this late in the season. It's over the Seychelles and near Agaléga right now, and this is the South Pacific, and as you can see, it's looking very sorry for itself, with very little activity going on here at all. What else can you say about that? Not much. So let's go on to the only area of interest that we can actually trace, and albeit barely at that as well, is the one in the Southwest Indian Ocean. It's 171 kilometers from the island of Cavite, 285 from Agaléga to the south there, 438 from Victoria, the capital of the Seychelles, 500 from Des Roches, and 1025 from Antsiranana in Madagascar. Agaléga, of course, being a Mauritius island there, way up north, could also be impacted by this system, and the main threat from this is going to be rainfall. So let's take a look at satellite imagery. Well, first of all, here's the Eastern Pacific. Now you do see that potent system on the left hand side. That will not be the tropical cyclone if it forms, although models are indicating that it could become a weak disturbance. It's more likely to be that little system there on the right hand side near Costa Rica that might end up developing into that tropical cyclone next week. This is the Southwest Indian Ocean then, and spot the area of interest. It could be quite a difficult task, but we are starting to see a little bit of rotation occurring here, where we have some cloud cover, but not very much of it, it has to be said. We expect to see improvement over the next couple of days. And here's how it looks on the infrared view, and you can see once again it's not looking particularly dangerous right now, but we do expect that there's going to be a big build-up of convection over the next days into next week, and that could produce a lot of rainfall. Here's a cursory look at the Gulf of Mexico. We've got a lot of clouds flying across the southern United States and some storms just off the coast of Florida. In the southwest Caribbean, or the Caribbean itself there, it's looking fairly quiet, and the western Atlantic is also looking pretty quiet too. There's a little storm system there moving off towards the northeast past Bermuda. That was the severe weather this week in the US. And over the rest of the Atlantic out to sea there, no signs of any development in the deep tropics. Not much else there right now either. There's a better shot of the Eastern Pacific as well, or a wider shot, showing you quite a lot of everything else that's going on there, and a longer loop at that. but really not much going on apart from those one or two little curious disturbances. And this is the Western Pacific right now. We still have some deep convection down in the very low tropics there, and we have a wet day by the looks of things in the northern Philippine Islands over Luzon. And in the southwest region of Asia, you can see lots of thunderstorms blowing up over parts of Thailand, Myanmar, Malaysia, and also into Vietnam, Cambodia and Laos, as well as quite a few storms off India. Sea surface temperatures are looking good in the eastern Pacific and generally increasing up to 32 degrees in a couple of spots where that system could form next week. In the Atlantic, the Gulf of Mexico is rapidly coming to temperature now. You may have seen the previous updates where the whole western coast of Florida there is now up to 26 degrees plus a little bit more, I think, and the Gulf Stream looking good as well. Western Pacific, really warm waters off the west coast of the Philippines in the South China Sea, and off the east coast those temperatures are building too. Little cool spot over Guam, 28 degrees Celsius however, and through the southern Ryukyu Islands and beyond there, temperatures getting up to 26 now. Bay of Bengal is still piping hot with temperatures of 32 degrees Celsius quite easily around the Andaman Islands east and west. Moving up the coast there, temperatures are a little bit cooler but still very warm indeed. Southwest Indian Ocean, for this potential system, temperatures are around 28 or 29 degrees Celsius. Plenty of fuel for further tropical cyclone development. Australian region also looking okay, but temperatures are declining. A few spots there of 29 degrees Celsius off the coast of the Northern Territory and off the Kimberley. And in the South Pacific, those temperatures still looking good in those lower latitudes, but it doesn't look like we're going to get a storm over there. It is quite rare to see it at this time of year, but you can never fully rule it out. Compared to average, this is how it's looking. The orange zones are above, the blue zones are below. The Eastern Pacific has only a narrow corridor of warm anomalies. The Atlantic Ocean, though, has a much larger area there, although still a curious cool pool in the subtropical regions of the Sargasso Sea, but the main development region is smoking. North Indian Ocean also looking very good, Bay of Bengal in particular, and where the area of interest is in the Southwest Indian Ocean, it's running at about 2 degrees above average. Oceanic heat content certainly is failing now in the Coral Sea, but still good amounts in parts of the South Pacific in those low latitudes. In the North Pacific, it looks like this. We're starting to get a little bit more in the Eastern Pacific. It's gradual. In the Western Pacific, not as much because it's been a much more marked increase there in the last few days. Getting some really dark reds appearing now off the Philippines. It's pretty normal, but you can tell it's getting primed. In the Atlantic, the Gulf of Mexico still has some catching up to do apart from the loop current, but then you've got the Caribbean Sea, which is looking quite good, it has to be said. Some red zones now off Jamaica. That's a hot spot at this time. So let's check the GFS computer models then for the next 5 days first of all, and we're looking at the Southwest Indian Ocean for this potential system to emerge. Well, there it is. It forms pretty much exactly where it is right now. It doesn't move very much. Formation on the 14th or the 15th of May, and it starts to curve south and maybe southwesterly towards the end of that 5-day period. So it takes its sweet time to form, and it might be dealing with a few issues along the way, maybe some dry air, looks like there'll be some wind shear, but gradual movement southwards and then southwestwards. However, take a look at the accumulated rainfall from the system, including the precursor that we're looking at right now, and it's going to be producing a lot of rainfall over this area. Thankfully, hardly any land masses, but there are some of those islands that we mentioned in the distances before that will be affected by this rainfall, which could reach very high values, around about 30 inches near where it is currently, and maybe up to 37 inches down towards the southeast, but I don't think there's any islands quite down there, but that is gargantuan amounts, getting up and above 500 millimeters towards 1000 millimeters in a few spots. But on large land masses there, Madagascar only getting up to 3 inches, 75 millimeters. In the medium term then, we're looking at that Eastern Pacific system, which forms on day 6 or 7 according to GFS and becomes a substantial cyclone. Indeed, it becomes the first Eastern Pacific hurricane of the season. It does make for the west there, make sure it's south of Mexico, but another little area of interest is vying for development first off at the beginning there, just to the west of the storm, and that's why it bends northwards and westwards there around that other low pressure disturbance, and that might be the one that we were looking at on the satellite. Now this is the Southwest Indian Ocean once again with this cyclone. It keeps going, it holds on, it presses slowly, moving west and south, and then it does actually intensify close to the northern tip of Madagascar, then passes by, moves northwest in the end, just clipping the northern tip of the island. So storm force winds possible there, and could be a massive rain event if it keeps moving that slowly, and if it indeed forms, question mark. Well, you can scan the barcode and that will take you through to the Force 13 merch store, where you can take a look at all of our items as well as our full season and individual storm animations on request. And it's still there, we're still waiting for Hone and t-shirts to represent the fact they're still available. In the Scilly range, we continue to watch that Eastern Pacific hurricane as it gets stuck. It starts to stall there, and then it swivels back towards the north, but it really loses all momentum by that point and loses its tropical cyclone status. So it would be an interesting start to the East Pacific hurricane season if this happened, and there's still a lot of uncertainty as to what might happen, including potentially stronger scenarios and land interaction, land effect scenarios as well. So something we're going to have to watch very closely over the next few days, as those chances look to be going up. And in the Western Pacific, the GFS has not given up on a substantial typhoon, but it certainly won't be for many of the systems we were watching. It will be a new one very late on now in the month. 25th, 26th of May, it starts to get real momentum, becoming a Category 4. Is the GFS crying wolf again? That's a good question, one that we can't answer just yet, but it is a quite similar track to what we were seeing in previous model runs, but it is very late on in this run, so we really can't give it much credit at this point. Another little system there in the South China Sea. As for the Southwest Indian Ocean system, it continues to persist and it tries to do another Hidaya, moving up towards the northern part of Tanzania, actually maybe even into Kenya, as a very weak remnant low by that point, but certainly not what those areas need, because they have been dealing with significant flooding issues throughout the last few months. Hidaya probably worsened it. I've not heard about any effects from that, but this one, if that happens, would be another unwelcome event. Speaking of unwelcome events, Cyclone 1B happened on this day in 1979, a strong, powerful Category 4 at quite a low latitude, forming down there, passing by Sri Lanka, and then really strengthening as it approached probably Tamil Nadu or Andhra Pradesh, if my geography serves me correctly, over there in India, and then it moved inland later on, probably on the 12th or maybe on the 13th of May, weakening a little bit, but it peaked on this day during the middle of May 11th, and it was 150 miles per hour according to our analysis. Well, back to today, we are still unclassified until we get stronger signals from these systems. The first name on the Atlantic naming list is Alberto. In the Eastern Pacific, it's Aletta. And in the Central Pacific, our next name is Hone, which has been the case for 5 years. In the West Pacific, next up is Iwinya. In the North Indian Ocean, it is still Rimal. 16 storms so far this year, and we are falling quite behind pace. We're about 32% below average so far in 2024. Things can change quickly though. Robin is the next name in the Australian region, and that rolls over into next season. The Southwest Indian Ocean, Iali, and those names will be removed. There will be new names starting in July. In the South Pacific, the next name is Pitta.
Become an Ultimate Fan today.